said, I'm joined by a very special guest today, someone that I know for Gamecock fans especially does not need any type of introduction, but I'm going to try to do my best. He's a two-time national champion for the South Carolina baseball team in 2010 and 2011. Also appeared, of course, in the national championship game in 2012. Overall in his college career, 26-6 record, 1.91 ERA through 354 total innings with 268 strikeouts. Was drafted in the 9th round, 297th overall in the 2012 MLB draft by the Los Angeles Angels. Has kind of jumped around the league, played for Los Angeles, Cleveland, Texas Rangers, Tampa Bay, and San Francisco. Has thrown actually 36 innings at the MLB level and actually just signed a new contract with the Chicago Cubs. Gamecock hero, like I mentioned. So I want to go ahead and introduce Michael Roth. Michael, appreciate you joining the show. Like I mentioned, it's a pleasure to have you on.
No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So kind of want to jump right into it as far as your Gamecock career and kind of what led you to South Carolina. So I think you had a pretty interesting recruitment out of high school, recruited as both a first baseman and a pitcher, I believe. Talk about kind of your recruitment, why you chose South Carolina, and, you know, were you planning on being primarily a fielder or pitcher? Was it kind of a two-way type thing?
So my first interaction with South Carolina was after my sophomore year in high school. I was playing at the Sarge Fry in the summer with my my travel team, and at the end of the game, I think it was like a Sunday, late Sunday, and at the end of the game, all of us were like planning on going to eat somewhere, and the coach came up to me and was like, "Hey, Coach Tanner wants to speak with you. You got a minute?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So Coach Tanner came and spoke with me and my mom. He's like, "Hey, I want to drive you guys around campus," and I was like, "All right, cool, but I was gonna go eat dinner, but all right, I guess I need to go do this." So we drove around campus, and Coach Tanner was kind of pointing out things. I think he was just making a bunch of stuff up, to be honest with you, because he was like, "This is the Horseshoe, this is where you have all your classes." I don't think I had a single class at the Horseshoe. And so we go to the Roundhouse, which is obviously no longer there, and that's when he presented the offer to me, and he was like, I know you still have a lot of time, and like technically I couldn't talk to schools unless I was on their campus. So like my official recruitment time wasn't open yet. So South Carolina was the first school that I ever talked to. And then, a few months go by and I hadn't committed or anything. And once like it officially opened, I forget what that date was, I had some contact from North Carolina, because that was when Coach Holbrook was still there. I talked with, of course, Clemson, and I think it came down to it was down in like November. I went on a visit to Clemson, and then the next week I went on a visit to Carolina. And when I was in Columbia, it just felt like home. It felt like the right place to be. I really enjoyed the coaches, and at the time that was Coach Calvi. What's his name? Who's at Clemson now? I just blanked. Oh, Monty Lee was there.
Yeah, Lee. Yeah.
And Coach Toman was still there.
Toman was there too. Yeah, I forgot about that.
So, it was a little bit different staff that I ended up having, really. But, it just felt like the right place to be. And all of that to say, I was recruited mostly as a first baseman. The pitch was really that Smoke was going to leave, was going to get drafted in 2008, and he was going to go pro. And it was basically, that was a good opportunity for me to come in to South Carolina and win the starting spot as a first baseman. And we obviously all know how that went. So it was an interesting recruitment, and I do remember, and the way I got to pitch there was I always pitched in high school, but it was I enjoyed it, but I always loved to hit, and I was throwing in a game. I think it was kind of the similar thing at Sarge Fry, and Coach Calvi had watched me pitch. And at the end of the game, he was like, "Hey, I know you don't want to come here and pitch." He's like, "But we could really use you just in case we need you." He's like, "So I just want you to throw just some bullpens and stay ready." And so that was kind of how he got me to throw. And when I showed up in the fall, I was kind of doing the two-way deal, but mostly focusing on playing first base. And then at the end of the fall, I was so bad at the plate that my only way to get on the field was to throw strikes.
Absolutely. So kind of fell into the relief role there, kind of a lefty specialist, if you will. I want to go back because you talked a lot about Coach Tanner. Obviously, we all know the legend he is at South Carolina. Talk about playing for Coach Tanner, kind of what it was like. I've talked with a couple of guys that played from the past. They all have very interesting gleaming reviews of him, obviously, but it's really really interesting. Just talk about kind of your experience under Coach Tanner. What he means to you.
Coach Tanner is one of those guys where when you're playing for him, sometimes you hate him. But at the end of it, you appreciate him. When I was there, I had a ton of respect for him all the time, but he was tough. He was always trying to make you better. And sometimes that was annoying, sometimes that was frustrating. And one thing that I would say as a credit to him is he knows how to get people. He knows how to push people the right way, and he doesn't do it. He didn't do it the same. He didn't push my buttons the same way that he did Jackie or Adam Matthews. He had his unique style, and he knew guys that he needed to wrap his arm around, and he knew guys that he had to chew into. So I had a ton of respect for him when I was playing for him, and even still. But sometimes, he was a pain as well. But it was funny when we were coming up. When I was, coming up through the program, we would always interact with guys that were older than us, and they'd be like, "Man, you guys have it easy. Coach Tanner used to really get on us, and now he kind of lets you do what you want." And I didn't necessarily know if that were true, but the way that I saw Coach Tanner morph over my 4 years, I think it was definitely how he not necessarily relaxed, because he was always intense and wanted to win, and he was always like ready to fight somebody when he was in that dugout. But I think he understood how to let people be themselves. And that he was able to kind of take a back seat on some things because we had such a good team that was able to just kind of police themselves in a sense. We had a guy like Adrian Morales who would jump in anybody's face, whether it was me or Jackie or anybody. So Coach Tanner he's a smart, intelligent individual and just knew how to get the most out of the guys.
Awesome. So fast forward a little bit. Obviously, like we mentioned, you're a reliever in 2009. Play a little bit of first base here and there, but kind of a lefty specialist. 2009, 2010. Fast forward all the way to the World Series. You get the call to start in the College World Series against Clemson in 2010. Talk about just kind of what was going through your mind when you found out you were getting the start, and kind of your emotions, running through you maybe like the night before.
Well, there must have been a mix of signals, because I didn't really know I was starting until the day before, or until the day of. I remember after the game, we won in extra innings, and I believe I threw that night. I think it was Oklahoma, and I may have thrown like an inning or something, or a third. And after the game, everybody's kind of celebrating, and there's kind of the madness, and Coach Hobart looks at me and is like, "Be ready to throw tomorrow." And I'm like, duh, like I was lefty special, so I would come in and throw like a batter or two and throw the next day the same thing. So I was just kind of thrown off by that. And then they always did room checks, and so it got to curfew, and Coach Tanner and Coach Calvey walked in, and Coach Calvey was like, "Hey, are you good to throw tomorrow?" I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Why? And he's like, "Are you good to start?" And I was like, yeah. I mean, didn't really. And he's like, "All right." And then that was it. And then we made a couple other jokes. And I looked at Adam, and I was like, because Adam Matthews was my roommate, and I was like, what are they talking about? We didn't really understand what was going on. So I wake up the next day, and we had breakfast. And Jay Brown goes, "Hey, are you starting today?" I was like, "I don't know. They hadn't told me anything." So I finished breakfast and I get back up to my room and I got a text from my mom and she's like, "Hey, good luck today." And I was like, "Thank you, but what is different today than any other day?" And she sent me like a link of something that said I was starting. And so I looked at that and I was like, "Hey, I guess I'm starting today." So that was kind of how I found out I was officially starting. Um, and maybe I just didn't hear what Coach Calvin and Coach Tanner said that night. I don't know, but um, I didn't find out until super late. So I don't think I had anything. I didn't really have much time to think about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the beginning of the Twitter sphere where everybody knows before you do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So in that game, obviously, I mean, I think you were only expected to go 3 or 4 innings. You know, I remember watching that game on TV and everyone saying, you know, if he can just give them 3 or 4 solid innings and they'll kind of figure it out from there, you know. And you wind up obviously throwing a complete game shutout. Did you think yourself you could go the distance, or did you even surprise yourself by going the whole game?
What's funny is prior to the game, I was leaving the hotel and I got on the same elevator as Coach Tanner and I get on there and he's like, "How many you got in you today?" And I was like, Coach, I'll probably just throw until my arm falls off. And he's like, "Okay, so is that 1 inning?" And and I was like, maybe 1 1/3. Um, and so did I think that I would be able to throw 9 innings? No, but I'd never really put any expectations on myself when I was going in. It was more like for me, it was every time I came off the field after throwing an inning, it was like, okay, let's just get one more inning. Um, I knew that we had been taxed pitching wise the night before, and I knew that if we were able to win this game and get to the next one with Dyson on the hill, that we'd be in good shape. And so after the first few innings, I just remember myself telling myself like, all right, let's just get one more, and then we'll turn it over to the bullpen, and that way it just kind of let me, with the way that I was thinking, it just eventually became 9 innings. We played some great defense behind me. I know we made some really good plays, and that was able to keep my pitches down. I think I threw like 100 pitches that game, and if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have been able to go through a complete game.
Absolutely. So I got to ask. Obviously, there's a huge, fiery rivalry between South Carolina and Clemson. How fun was it to do what you did? Not only just to do it in the College World Series, but against your arch rival as well.
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, and we kind of knew the history of it too, and what happened in the previous trips to Omaha with the older teams,
In
and how
2002.
that and how they had beat Clemson like that. So we kind of knew the story, and um, when we were able to do it, it was super exciting, and especially we had Steve Bondurant there when he was our like our school person, he'd like check us into um in not the class but like study hall and everything. So,
Right.
and I think he pitched that first game against Clemson like I did. So we were talking about it. I think he came up before the game and was like, rub my arm, and he was like, all right, let me give you some good luck. And so I think it worked.
Absolutely. So, just the overall run in 2010. Talk about the run you guys made. Being down like you mentioned, your last strike against Oklahoma, having to beat Clemson twice. Coming back from all that, and facing UCLA, who I mean, threw 2 of the best arms in college baseball, and Trevor Bauer and Garrett Cole, 2 guys that are at the big league level, doing what they do best. Just talk about kind of overall the 2010 season and the run you guys made to win it all.
Um, when we walked into 2010, we were coming off. I remember coming into the 2010 season, we were coming off 2009 when we felt like we should have advanced to a super regional. We were a couple outs away from advancing, and we kind of let that slip through our fingertips. And we had some new guys coming in, and we had that was when Adrian Morales walked in the door. And so we felt like we had a pretty good team, and we went through that year, and we played some good series, and I just don't think we knew how good we were until we got to the playoffs. And even then, I think we still didn't understand how tough we were as a team, like how good we could pitch, um, and just the level, just the quality of players that we had. But I remember when we got to Omaha, we lost that very first game, and Adam and I didn't even unpack our bags because we were like, oh well, at least we made it here. Um, and then we went on and we beat Arizona, and then we just kept winning. And I think at the end of the year, we were able to look back and be like, man, we had a pretty good squad, and some, we had a team that just knew how to win and knew how to compete. Um, but it was a special run, I mean, doing what we were able to do out of the losers bracket. We lost the first one and didn't look back. We put what is that, 6-7 wins together, I guess, maybe. I
Right.
can't remember. And to win a championship, and you're right, we did it a bunch against a bunch of quality arms. But the thing is too is like you can't overlook some of the players that we had on our team. Whit doing what he's done in the big leagues the last 2 years, Jackie Bradley, Sam Dyson. I mean, we had some really good guys. We had some guys that are doing it in the pro levels, and we have some guys that were just exceptional college baseball players.
Yeah, absolutely. Those teams were stacked for sure. I was thinking just of 2010, you had Christian Walker as a freshman. I think Jackie Bradley was new to the squad, and just guys like that. I know for sure that team was stacked. Fast forwarding to 2011, you guys went back to back. It kind of leads me into this question, which was 2011 for you guys more of a, because you said, you didn't really realize how good you were, a bunch of young guys just kind of going out there playing ball every day, just, let the chips fall where they may and see what happens. In 2011, did you guys kind of fully expect, like, hey, we're expecting to get back to Omaha and win it all again? Were you guys kind of more self-aware, like, hey, we know how good we are and we expect to, get back to Omaha and win it all? Or what was that like coming back in 2011?
I would say our expectations were high, but we didn't necessarily mention, winning a national championship again. We knew that we were good. We knew that we had a quality group of guys that come back, but we also knew how hard it was to do what we did, and make it to Omaha. Just making it to Omaha is really tough, and then going on in Omaha and rattling off wins is tough also. And so we knew how hard it was, but we did expect to win the last game. That was kind of always the goal, is to go in there and win the last game. In 2011, we knew that we'd face some pretty stiff competition with Vanderbilt, Florida. Florida was kind of always our in conference rival with the guys that they had down there. And so we knew how good we were, but we also knew that it would be a fight. We knew that every team that we faced would come in there, and they would want to knock us off. We had a target behind our back, and so we knew we wouldn't be able to just throw our gloves out there and win. So, but we had a fiery group again. A bunch of those guys, all the guys on those teams were, they were scrappers, like they had to scrap and fight and compete and never give up. And that was kind of the trademark for those two teams.
Absolutely. So talking about for you personally in 2011, obviously the Clemson game in 2010 sort of vaunted you into a starting role. You come into the year, you go from throwing 40 innings in 2010 to 145 innings in 2011 as a starter. Talk about kind of just what you had to do to adjust, taking on a workload like that in a season, going from 40 innings to 145, and kind of what changed for you going from being just I'd say just a bullpen situational guy to the number one starter on that team.
Well, the first thing was that I enjoyed it a heck of a lot more. Yeah, being in the bullpens, it's a great role. I did not appreciate it as much just because I just was not a fan of it. I liked the fact that you could play every day, but I didn't like being cut off. It felt like I would go and face a batter and then, okay, well, that was it. And so I really enjoyed being able to have like my game, and that's kind of what it feels like as a starter. Like you get the ball and like that's your game to go out there and win for the team. And so that's what I really enjoy about starting and what I loved about the 2011 season. And I remember going into it, Coach Tanner was kind of flippant, or I guess wishy-washy as to whether he wanted me to start, because I remember us having conversations. He's like, should we have you start or should we keep you in the bullpen? And I didn't really lobby for one way or the other, but I think just because of the way it turned out that I was going to start. And then I remember going into the season, I think I was scheduled to start on I was supposed to be like the Saturday guy, the way it was lining up in scrimmages. And then the week before, he told me that I would be pitching on Friday. And so that was kind of how I got the Friday job. And, it was exciting. It was kind of, all right. Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you back now. Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
So that kind of vaulted me into like a more of a leadership position, and just being the Friday guy comes with a lot of responsibility. You get to set the tone each weekend, and I loved it. It was so much fun, and especially, with the team that we had and the defense that we had, it was a lot of fun to go out there every Friday night, and then for the rest of the weekend, just try to cheer on the guys and help them however you could.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's one of the biggest things I'd say, probably from what you did going to the pen to that Friday night roll, is just definitely the mental approach. And you definitely did a great job with that, obviously. Talking about 2011, obviously went back to back, but the one thing I want to highlight, you guys set the record for most consecutive NCAA tournament wins with 22, most consecutive wins in the College World Series with 12. Do you think that's something that will ever even be contested again, or do you think that's a kind of a legendary, once in a lifetime kind of run?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you. I mean, it was a difficult task to do, and to be honest with you, when we were in the middle of it, a lot of the players didn't even know. I wasn't even highly aware of like how we were rattling off wins, and with all the postseason wins and College World Series wins. With the way college baseball is going, there's so many teams with so many talented players. I think it might be hard for a team to go do what we did, but I wouldn't be surprised. At the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a team that just gets hot like we did, and they find a core group of guys. There's those 10 to 15 guys that they're building around for 2 to 3 years, and they're able to make a run at the College World Series twice. If that's the case.
Absolutely. And you talked about, being a part of those teams, obviously, and what made them so special, that win anyway kind of attitude. I remember you guys were, very adamant about that. Carolina baseball, just win anyway. Talk about sort of how you guys carried that. And I think it was both 2010, 2011 into 2012. I think that was just sort of Carolina baseball's mantra. Talk about what made that so special, kind of how that came about, and, what that meant to you guys.
Well, first I'd say a culture within an organization is created by its leader. And so, obviously the first praise goes to Coach Tanner and just the culture he was able to kind of cultivate in that program throughout all of his years. We knew that there was a lot of history in the South Carolina program, and Coach Tanner definitely put his mark on it. And when we were there, in the fall, one of the things that we always talked about from my freshman year on was being tougher than the other team, and just being competitive. And one thing Coach Tanner always harped about in the fall and beyond was just competing. That was something he always brought up, was compete. When he would cheer you on and yell, he would say, hey, compete out there or something. And so, and I think if you look at that term, it's just that, like, go out there and and bust your ass and try to do everything that you need to do in order to be successful out on the field, whether it's at an individual at bat or throwing a pitch. And so Coach Tanner kind of drove that into us. And when when things became tough, when you're in a tight situation, we always knew how to get out of that, and that was really to just be mentally tough and compete. And then, with 2010, well, the other good thing about the team was we had, we had some. Pause. Let me go back. The other thing about Coach Tanner is that he didn't make us. It wasn't all about baseball. We had to do some mandatory community service, and that was really just, I think, to help us gain perspective. When you're in college, you kind of live inside of a bubble, where you can, and doing that community service really helped us just gain perspective and meet people that maybe we wouldn't otherwise meet, and come into contact with individuals that we wouldn't otherwise come into contact with. And one of those was Baylor Teal. And we met him in the middle of that 2010 season. And then, he passed away in the middle of the College World Series in 2010 during that Oklahoma game. And so seeing like the fight of a little kid battling cancer, and seeing some of the other things that that we would go to the Children's Hospital for, that's kind of the fight and the competitiveness that we wanted to bring on the field. And so having Coach Tanner instill that in us, and then having the type of players that we had that really grabbed a hold of that and held each other accountable, is what created that win anyway culture that we were able to bring for the remainder of my years there.
Absolutely, I definitely remember that with Baylor Teal. Absolutely awesome story. Just kind of obviously what he meant to you guys. Moving ahead to the 2011 College World Series, you guys faced the Florida Gators, a team you were obviously extremely familiar with, and what I'd consider a pretty crazy series, especially game one. Talk about playing Florida. I mean, again, a team you guys were very, very familiar with in the SEC East. What was that kind of like? I mean, facing up with them again after you'd already matched up with them in the regular season.
I think that was even the first game in the finals was our second game playing them in Omaha, maybe.
Yeah, it was. I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
So I think we knew each other really well. And I think Forrest started that game, right? In 2011.
Yeah.
So we knew it was going to be tough. We knew how good Florida was. We knew that on paper, according to everyone else, that we probably were supposed to lose. But again, we kind of knew how good we were. We knew that we were, we felt like if we could get that game into a situation that benefited us, that we'd be able to win. And there were parts in that game, when Jake Williams made that throw to nail the guy at home, we were all going crazy. And I think, I forget who I looked at, but I looked at somebody and I was like, we're not going to lose this game, especially Jake. And I love Jake, and he would agree with this, but he did not have the best arm. And for him to make that throw was nothing short of a miracle. And then, what we dealt with bases loaded and everything in that game. I mean, we just had so many things going for us in that very first game. And heck, even in the game when we played Virginia, I
remember the Virginia one.
I mean, even that game, that's the game that got us to the finals. Even that game, we had so many things go our way, and I wouldn't say it was just lucky bounces, because we kind of forced some of that, but we definitely had some luck on our side, and part of that was just because of we kind of willed that our way. We went up there and we grinded out at bats. We played incredible defense, and when you have a guy like Scott Wingo at second base, you can always turn a double play as long as there's someone to turn a double play with. He just has that ability. And when we made some of those plays in the Florida game, we felt like we weren't going to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get to a couple of things you had mentioned because, like I mentioned, we had Forrest Kumas on the show last summer. He kind of echoed some of the same things you said, but, you talked about Scott Wingo, and I was actually going to bring up, the bases loaded jams and just some of the plays in that game. One I remember very clearly, the double play. I mean, is he the best defensive glove you've ever played with? Because, some of the plays he'd make was like wizardry out there.
Well, I would say I've played with some really good guys in professional baseball, and I can't say that Scott's better than them, but I would say Scott's probably one of the best at fielding his position. I played with Scott in high school, and he was he was incredible. He played short, and that was something that he honed his skill and his craft of fielding a baseball, no matter where he was. And so that was his thing, and in 2011 he had a heck of a series too. I think he won did he win the most valuable player?
I think he did win the MVP.
Yeah, I think he won the MVP that year.
I think he did.
And so that was just and that wasn't because that definitely wasn't just because of his defensive prowess, but the other thing to remember about that game is Walker had had broken his hand. He broke a bone in his hand, and going into that game, I was taking ground balls at first base because they didn't know if Christian was going to be able to play, and Christian ended up playing. He took some BP and he ended up playing with that broken hand. It was a broken hamate bone in his hand, and he literally played with like half of his hand numb. And I think he may have scored the winning run I think he got 2 hits that game.
I think he had a couple big knocks that game.
Yeah, he got a couple hits that game, and once Christian made it into the lineup and got a hit, I think we also felt like we were never going to lose that game as early on as the opening of the game, just because Christian was playing and he had the ability to go out there and change the game with one swing, and that's still one of the most badass moves I've seen from anybody I've ever played with. Christian was a tough SOB, and for him to go out there and play with a broken hamate bone and not even just play, but like get some hits and score some runs and play defense, that's one of the toughest things I've ever seen on a baseball field.
Absolutely. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, you had talked about Jake Williams and the throw that he made to gun the runner at home plate just to keep the game going. It was funny. We had, like I mentioned, Forrest Kumas on here, and he even told me that he said as soon as that ball was hit the left, we were all just like, oh shit. He's like, that throw, he's like, I still don't know to this day how he made it, but God, he gunned him. So it's all that matters.
Oh yeah. I think I turned around actually. I think once the ball was hitting the left field, I'm pretty sure I was hanging onto the railing, and I turned around and I was like, damn it,
Right.
And then I looked up and I had like stepped back because there was like a step up, and I had stepped down, and I looked and saw the ball in the air, and I like ran back up to the thing and saw he threw him out, and we just went crazy, because I'm pretty sure everyone thought that we were screwed. But Jake was just
throw of his life.
Jake was just touched by God in that throw,
Yeah, like angels in the outfield or something.
Yeah, we had some crazy stuff, with that base was loaded with those 2 plays. Scott made a pick. He made a pick and threw the guy out at home. Yeah,
and I remember the one they almost hit Robert Berry's mask.
Yeah, Barry scooped it like a first baseman.
Yeah.
And it was just some insane stuff that you see on a baseball field. And, in the moment, you don't really realize how crazy it is. But when you look back on it, you just kind of, the only thing you can say is, wow.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is that the craziest baseball game you think you've ever been a part of, or has there been one to top that?
Yeah, that's probably one of the craziest games I've ever been a part of. High level stress, the worst part is like being on the bench. When you're on the bench, you can't even do
Absolutely.
anything but just cheer people on and do nothing crazy. So I see why fans go nuts. And I mean, yeah, it was a high stress game. Um, I just remember every out was just intense, and it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. Some of the best, probably one of the best baseball games I've been a part of.
Absolutely. So yeah, obviously, you guys won the next night. Beat Florida 5-2 in that game. Won back-to-back titles. Just talk about, from a bigger picture, what that meant for you guys. Not only for you guys, but to bring that to the University of South Carolina baseball program, back-to-back national championships.
Well, first, it was just a big accomplishment for us in 2011. That was the main thing, was that we were able to go out there and put a team together and make it through the grind of a regular season, deal with some of the difficult stuff that we dealt with. I mean, if you look through 2011, we had some crazy stuff. I remember when we were in Mississippi State, Jackie hurt his wrist. That night, Evan had some heart thing and couldn't play the next day. And we had Stephen Neff playing outfield, and he goes on to tear for the next 3 weeks and helps us get to the College World Series. We just had guys step up week in and week out, and it really was a full squad that helped us get to the College World Series, and then a full squad that helped us win the thing. And so when you look at it like that, just over the course of 2011, it was incredible for us to do what we did. But then just being able to look at what we did previously in 2010 and win the last game at the old stadium, and then open up the new stadium, TD Ameritrade, with a championship was, that was kind of what we wanted to do. I remember when after 2010, we drove by the new park that was being built, and Coach Tanner had mentioned, he said, "Hey guys, don't you want to come in here in this new park next year and win one?" And that was kind of all he said in 2010, and we were able to do it. And so it was a ton of fun. And obviously for the fans that have supported us all those years, for Gamecock fans who maybe thought they would never see a national championship, much less two, it became, it felt like a great time to be a Gamecock. And, we were just able to it was special for all 35 guys and, that coaching staff. And it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So, I want to ask you this. I feel like I kind of know what you're going to say, but what would you say the better team is, 2010 or 2011?
Man, I don't know. That's really hard. Maybe 2011, just because we knew how good we were. I don't really know. That'd be super tough to say. And everybody always asks me, which is the best, which national championship do I like more? And that's another hard thing to say. It's each one has its own memories. In 2010 it was so fresh and such a surprise, and in 2011 it was it was just such a triumph through what we had been through the whole year. And so each one had their own feelings. It didn't feel like deja vu. It felt like a completely new moment. And so it was, each one was super special to me, and I'm sure everybody else would say the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how I forgot to bring it up, but the 2010 with the Whit Merrifield, obviously with the walk-off. I mean, that was, I know for Gamecock fans, I was watching. That was incredible. I mean, that was absolutely an incredible game. In 2011, obviously had its drama too. So, like you said,
I mean, yeah. So that walk-off game might be the only game that tops the Florida game, to be honest with you, just because of the win. And I remember the craziest thing was Scott Wingo had a 3-2 count, and Coach Tanner told him to bunt because he knew that Scott would not bunt at a ball, but he knew he'd probably swing at a ball. And sure enough, it was a ball, and Scott didn't. Oh man, that was just some of the crazy things that happened over the course of a season, but that was funny.
Absolutely. So 2012, you guys make it all the way back to the College World Series final, but lose to Arizona. Really, really good Arizona team, I might add. Even though you didn't win it all, that year, how special was it to, be one of the few teams in college baseball, I'd say, history to go to 3 straight College World Series finals?
Well, for those of us that were older and had been around, it was pretty special to kind of show the younger guys the ropes. I think in that year, at any given time, we had about 5 new guys in the lineup every night. And so, some of the older guys really we kind of forced those younger guys to go to Omaha. We kind of drug them with us. And, we had some really good players on there. Like, Grayson Griner was an excellent catcher and walked in and was able to catch a really good staff and catch a really good games every time that he was out there, along with Dante Rosenberg. And then, Joey Pancake out there and Tanner English. I mean, guys that were really helping the team and really helped us get to Omaha. And as far as getting there, it just felt like something we should do. We felt like no matter who we lost in the previous year, we felt like we still had the capability of getting there, and we did. And we really, we fought our way to the championship again. It was kind of that same mentality that we had the 2 previous years, was to just find a way to win and go out there and compete. And we did that up until the finals. I remember, it was funny just how I had mentioned earlier how we were getting kind of things to go our way every bounce and, or every miracle throw. It was game 2 that I was pitching against Arizona, and I think at the very beginning of the game, like, they made a diving play to rob a hit that probably would have been a big hit or like a big leadoff hit, and then they were winning 1-0, and it was like in the 4th, and I think we had just crushed a ball, and some guy made a stupid catch out in the outfield, and Christian was sitting right next to me, and I looked at him and I was like, you know what? I was like, this feeling that we're feeling right now is probably what Florida felt last year when everything was going our way, because it feels like everything's going Arizona's way. And Christian kind of shook his head. He was like, yeah, this is insane. And sure enough, they went on to beat us, and we weren't out of the game by any means, at 4 when we were down by 1 in the 4th, but it definitely felt like they kind of had all the momentum. They had all the bounces going their way. But we put together a good run, and I will still remember how much losing that game hurt. Winning the 2 previous years was great, but still that 2012, seeing them accept their trophy and their like individual things was just it still hurt a lot, and especially for it to be my last game at South Carolina, there was a ton of emotions there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to come that far, you can only imagine all the blood, sweat, and tears you guys put in for sure. But talking about, just the whole stretch, tons of talents on the teams you played from, not just the national title teams, but 2009 to 12, your whole career. Who would you say, in your opinion, is the best overall player that you ever played with at South Carolina?
Best overall player. I think I'd have to go Witt, to be honest with you. Witt was a guy that when we were there, he's kind of always been just undersized, or there's always been a knock on him. And the one thing that he knew how to do was he just knew how to play baseball. I mean, he's a baseball player. He knows the game mentally, and he figures out a way to play. And, when he was a freshman, he was playing second base, right? And then when I walked in my freshman year, his sophomore year, we moved to the outfield. And then I think we moved him again his junior year, and in his pro career, he's pretty much played every position. So he was a guy that just when you put him on the field, you could tell he was a baseball player, and he, he's made himself into a really good hitter professionally as well. And so it's just to see what he's been able to do is pretty incredible. It took him a while to get to the big leagues, but since he's been there, he's done. He's kind of gone off and been really good for the Royals. And I think I would have to pick Witt. It'd be between Witt and Jackie, but I think I'd have to vote for Witt on that. Sorry, Jackie.
Yeah, definitely. It's been fun to watch Whit Merrifield's progression. I mean, like you mentioned, just when you look at him, I mean, he's a ball player. There's no other way to put it. But yeah, I was about to say, I think I might have said Jackie Bradley just because I mean he's just a baller too. I mean they're both kind of similar, I feel like, but I mean he's an absolute stud too. So, but not too bad.
I mean Jackie's kind of the one thing that I remember is when we came in my freshman year, I came in with Jackie in 2000, in the fall of 2008. We came in together, and I mean, he was just better than the rest of us, like just better than the rest of us as freshmen. And he's still better than a lot of us. But I just incredible player, but just the way I've seen Witt grow has been that for me just puts him above Jackie as far as all around player.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember reading when Jackie obviously first got there. They were saying, there's this kid on South Carolina's team hit 104 miles an hour from the outfield, and I remember everybody was just like, "Whoa!" So I remember for sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say I wish I could hit that on the mound or even remotely close to that.
And that kind of actually leads me to what I wanted to ask you next. Obviously you're a guy who. I would call a crafty lefty. I mean, somebody who obviously, like you mentioned, velocity, not your strong suit, if you will. I mean, you're not a guy hitting 95, 96 on the gun. Talk about, when you were in college and to now especially, but when you were in college, sort of what you had to do, not just from a mental standpoint, but it's just sort of your game plan, knowing and kind of acknowledging who you were. And I remember obviously in 2011, I believe it was, you started changing up with arm slots, for the lefties, you kind of drop down with them. Just talk about kind of your mindset and your overall mental game and, attacking hitters.
So when I came in as a freshman, I was kind of a righty specialist as a lefty because I had a really good changeup and I threw two seamers and changeups, and my curveball wasn't very good and my slider wasn't very good either. And so I really was a lot better against righties than I was lefties. And because at that time, like throwing a left on left changeup was like unheard of. And I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner because I do it now, but I should have done it sooner. But then my sophomore year, I remember I was turning double plays at first base and Coach Calvi came up to me and he pulled me aside. He's like, "Hey, have you ever thought of throwing sidearm?" And I looked at him like he was insane. And he was like, "Well, let's go throw a bullpen." So he made me throw a 20-pitch bullpen, all sidearm. And afterwards, he was like, "How does that feel?" And I was like, "Awful." And he's like, "Okay, good. Stick with it." And he straight up told me, he's like, "Listen, we've got a bunch of guys that can get righties out. And if you want to get on the field, you're going to have to find a way to make yourself valuable." And that was the one thing I appreciate about the staff the whole time that I was there. They were upfront. They told you like it was. And so then I started dropping down because he was like, I needed to be better against lefties. So that's how I became a lefty specialist, was I started dropping down and throwing sidearm. And so we had a sidearm righty who bounced around angles. It was Pat Sullivan. And I was like, "How do you throw your slider?" So he taught me how to throw a slider from sidearm. And, but really I never threw the same pitch in the same location twice. That was kind of my ability, was that I was able to throw a fastball, changeup, slider for strikes. And if you can do that in college, you can keep hitters off balance. The biggest thing about, hitters are always trying to time up pitchers. And for the most part, pitchers are just trying to screw up that timing. And, I didn't have the fastball to blow them away. So I never tried to do that. I just threw, I just kept them off balance. I wanted them to be out in front on a changeup or to be behind, to be late on a fastball. And if I wasn't, and the other good thing was I was able to control the ball pretty well. I wouldn't say I had great command, because I didn't necessarily command the ball great, but I knew how to pick the zone, and I was able to just live on the outside corner and then surprise them with something in, and that just allowed me to really grow into myself as a pitcher and kind of who I am today. And it's not all that different. It's just I know how to set up hitters a little bit better. I also have to be more in the strike zone when you're in, as you climb the levels, that strike zone gets a little bit smaller.
Right.
And, it bought me time to make my pitches better. And so now there's a little bit more life on my fastball, and, I'm able to make my changeup a little bit better. I have a pretty good curveball now. I have a lot better slider. And so that gap of time between my sophomore, and junior year was able to kind of help me get through to pitch, and then also it helped me improve my game.
Absolutely. So like you mentioned, the adjustment, college to pro, there's obviously a ton, but you were drafted by the Angels in 2012. What would you say for you has been the biggest adjustment overall from college baseball to professional?
Having a new team every year.
That'll probably do it.
Yeah, I've bounced around a bunch, probably a little bit more than most guys do early on in their career. When I got drafted in 2012, I went straight to rookie ball in Orem, Utah. And after those 2 months, because I had thrown like 140 innings, I was only able to throw 2 innings every time I went out there. So I was like on a normal starter schedule, but throwing 2 innings every time. And after those 2 months, I hated pro ball. I was like, this sucks. And it was probably just it was definitely just because I couldn't go pitch. And I wasn't able to just go out there and like be free. But when I showed up in 2013, talk about a whirlwind of a year. I showed up in camp, and, I was hoping to break with a high A team, and ended up breaking with the double A team. And then after one start, I got called up to the big leagues. And it basically throughout that whole year, I would wake up each day not knowing whether I was in Little Rock or Anaheim, because of how much I went back and forth to the big league team in double A. What's funny is I showed up to spring training and I was pitching well. And, I kind of knew they were debating whether they wanted to send me to double A or send me to high A. And the assistant GM, Scott Service, who's the manager of the Seattle Mariners right now, he came up to me and was like, so where do you want to pitch this year? Or he was like, where do you think you should pitch this year? And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, the big leagues. So my advice to anybody out there is whenever somebody asks you where you think you should be, you should tell them where you want to be. Because for me, it worked. I don't know if it'll work for you, but it worked for me. But yeah, that was a crazy year, in pro ball. I also jumped some velocity when I got to pro ball. I don't know what it was or, what happened, but velocity is it's like a fickle thing. My first year in pro ball, I was 88 I hit like 92 a couple times, which was unheard of. I didn't even sniff that in college. And then now I'm kind of, I'm 87 to 90, I touch 91, but mostly around that 88, 89 range. So I don't understand velocity. I don't know why it bounces around. I wish I did, because then I could try to make myself throw 94. But again, I'm not that guy. So, pro ball has been a blast. I've gone to places that I never would have thought that I've been playing baseball. I've played baseball in Germany, played baseball in the Dominican Republic, and hopefully there's some other opportunities out there that I wouldn't think that I would have done. But professional baseball has been a lot of fun, and I'm just super thankful to still be able to do it. And I'm, 6 years removed from college, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Absolutely. I'll ask this simply put: how awesome is it pitching, in a big league park when you get that call? Maybe the first time you get that call, you're getting the call to the big leagues. How awesome was that for you?
It's pretty awesome. I remember, my first time out, when I made my debut, that was such a crazy day, especially because it was my first full season in professional baseball. I didn't really know what was going on. And, I walked in the clubhouse and I ended up throwing 2 innings against the Houston Astros, and I got the win because Pujols hit a walk-off double. And I was out there celebrating with a bunch of guys, and they didn't even know who the hell I was. But I'll never forget that moment. I was sitting, and they gave me like a beer Gatorade shower after the game for my first win, and I did all the media stuff, and I just remember I didn't want to leave that locker room that night because of how just awesome a moment. I had realized a dream that I'd always had. And each moment that I've get to pitch and each debut that I've made every season has been pretty special. Even if it hasn't gone my way, like in 2016, I pitched against the Red Sox and got blasted. And even still, that was awesome to be able to pitch at Fenway. I'd love to be able to get a shot to pitch in the big leagues this year. One more opportunity would be great because it's always something special when you get to step on a big league mound. I mean, to be honest with you, it's pretty special to step on any mound. It's just a lot of fun to go out there, and there's not many things in the world that are that I get that feeling like I do pitching. It's kind of just it's an awesome feeling going out there and competing and just, it's you versus someone else. And it's a unique feeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. The cat and mouse game for sure. I'll ask you, just frankly, is there anything that you feel, because obviously you've bounced between the major league level and obviously the minor league level. What would you say at this point right now in your career is the one thing maybe you need to, or is there anything you need to improve or fix to get back to that level? Is there anything, what are you working on right now in your game that's kind of the biggest area of opportunity for you feel like?
Yeah. So one of the things that I learned in 2013, my first year when I was in the big leagues, was when I got there, I was like, okay, now it's just time to execute, like now's the time to just go out there and execute. And what I learned that year was that once you get to the big leagues, it's not just about execution, because those guys are trying to learn too. When you're in the big leagues, you're the best at what you're doing, no doubt, but you're still learning how to stay the best. I mean,
right.
Or how to get better. And when I was up there and I was young, I remember coach wanted me to make an adjustment. I was like thinking, why does he want me to change stuff? Like, I just got to the big leagues. Like, why do I need to change something? And so I'm always learning. Guys that I've been around who are, big league veterans, they're always learning. So that never stops. I don't think that stops in baseball. I don't think that stops in life. But right now for me, it sounds so simple, but I mean, it's just location. I mean, it's just execution, like going out there and being able to dot up an arm side fastball without hesitation or anything is something that I need to be able to do. And oftentimes I'm able to do it. Making my curveball sharper, making my slider sharper, throwing a better changeup, or throwing a changeup that looks like a strike out of the hand and turns into a ball, so you get more of a swing and miss. All those things I'm constantly trying to improve my game and make every pitch look like it's the same right out of my hand, and it's a strike, and then it turns into a ball. That's what we're ultimately always trying to do. And so it's really just, there's nothing big that I'm working on. It's more just like fine tuning things that I've been working on since I picked up a baseball and tried to throw a strike.
Absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely makes perfect sense. What's been your favorite organization? Obviously, you've been with a ton. What's been your favorite organization you've been with?
Um, I really enjoyed my time with Texas. Each one has been pretty cool. When I was with the Angels, obviously they gave me the opportunity to play professional baseball. They introduced me to the big leagues. Um, that was pretty special. And then my time with the Indians was really cool. I met a lot of good guys, and I had a great start to the year, and then kind of fell off near the end. Texas was a ton of fun. I just really liked the way they handled things. We had a great AAA staff when I was there. I was in Round Rock in 2016. Um, that was just a great group. And then last year I was with the Giants and the Rays, and it was such a short stint that I probably didn't get the whole feel, for either of them. And then this year here with the Cubs, I'm a week and a half in, so I can't really talk too much about it. But they seem like a great organization as well, and obviously a ton of history. So I've really enjoyed my time with all of them. But Texas was a lot of fun being in Round Rock, right outside of
Absolutely.
Austin.
So, yeah, no, absolutely. So, one thing I want to touch on, you're really adamant about, I remember when you were in college and, definitely now, you're a really big advocate on your life being bigger than baseball. I think your Twitter bio is something like, baseball is what I do, not who I am. Talk about, what your life is like outside of baseball, what your biggest interests are, and kind of what that slogan or what that, obviously what your Twitter bio kind of means to you overall.
Yeah, of course. That's a constant fight, not identifying yourself as what you do. I don't think that's just in my realm as an athlete. I think that's probably in everybody's. I think as men, we tend to identify ourselves a lot with our careers and and like the first question everybody asks you, really, it's like you tell them your name and then they ask you what you do. So um, that's almost like an identifier for us and our culture. So that's something that when I was younger, I recognized that I would need to fight. And so far, I'm fighting the good fight. There's definitely times when I've kind of gotten lost. I don't see that perspective. And so my life outside of baseball, really, it's just recognizing that I'm not just a baseball player, that my value isn't held in baseball. Really, it's just that my value is held in that I'm a son of God, made in God's image. And so that gives me, that's my identification, is that is the Lord, that I'm a son of God, and that I'm made in His image, and all the characteristics that He's given me, and that speaks value into me, not the baseball career, and that's something that's difficult. That godly perspective is super hard. That's why you just kind of have to realign your thoughts almost daily, maybe even a little bit more than that, like every minute. And but as far as the other things that are important to me, my family, my wife Rachel is super important to me. She's a Gamecock, so she's approved by all of South Carolina. But yeah, so just speaking love and encouragement into my marriage, into my wife is important. And then things we love to do is we love to travel. We lived in Hawaii one off season. We've been to London, Paris, Amsterdam, Prague. We went to Bora Bora on our honeymoon. So we like to travel and get around. And one of the things that I started doing 2 years ago is getting interested in commercial real estate. So I kind of do that in the off season in Greenville. So that's another thing that I like. I've always driven by places, and I've just been intrigued why that is what it is. Why is that a Walgreens, or why are they turning that into something, or what should go there? So I got into commercial real estate, and I really really enjoy that, and think that might be something I'm interested in after baseball. And really just enjoying time with friends and family.
Awesome. Yeah. And I really, that's a great message. I think a lot of people, not just in baseball, but just through life, like you talked about, kind of, being able to separate, what you do versus who you are, I think is something that we can all for sure apply to our own lives. So I'm going to,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's
yeah, for
something.
sure.
I still have a book that I have a book I'm reading about that, and it's and it's like, you're constantly trying to learn. It's like how do you integrate your work with who you are as a person, and that's just, we spend, the fact of life is that we spend the majority of our time at work, and so we're shaped and molded by that. But obviously that can't become, or it can't be, because sometimes it can be, but for me, I can't hold my worth and my value in my outing that night as a pitcher.
Absolutely. No, 100% agree with you. I think you probably drive yourself crazy doing that with how difficult the game baseball is. For sure. So I'm going to get you out here, Michael. Got a couple quick hitter questions for you. Just you can answer just one word or kind of as much as you want, but just some like quick hitter fun questions. Best hitter you ever faced?
David Ortiz.
All right. Favorite teammate?
Wow, that's tough.
Got to put somebody on the spot, right?
I know, man. Favorite teammate. I'm gonna go with. I'll go with Pat Sullivan. That was college. He's one of my favorites. I mean, there's so many teammates in college that were probably the best teammates ever. And then I've played with a ton of good guys in professional baseball as well.
Absolutely. Has Christian Walker's home run at Coastal Carolina landed yet?
Definitely not.
Funniest story from college, if you have one.
Oh man, one that I can tell you, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, let me think. Funniest story. Oh, I think this is a pretty funny story, and Coach Tanner might get mad at me for telling it. But we had a snow day in 2012, or was it 12? Maybe it was 11. I don't know, but it snowed a ton, and it was the first day back to school, and like they had canceled class, and Coach Tanner sent out a text that was like, if you don't feel comfortable, like, no official practice, but we're doing this from this time, but if you don't feel comfortable, then don't come in. And Adam Matthews had a truck, and I had a car. And I looked at Adam, and I was like, hey, are you going to go in? Because if so, I'll ride it with you. And he's like, no, I don't want to drive in the snow. And I mean, I think we had like 5 inches, so it was a good amount. And so we didn't end up going in that day. And I showed up the next day, and Coach Tanner was pissed at me and me and Adam. And I was like, Coach, I was like, I can't drive in my car. And he's like, your roommate has a truck. Why didn't you ride with him? And I was like, listen, he said he wasn't capable. He didn't want to drive in the truck. And I mean, he has like one of these big trucks with like mud tires. And we still didn't go in. And we should. And Coach Tanner's like, what, are you afraid of getting in a fender bender? And Adam and I looked at each other. And I remember we looked at Coach Tanner. We're like, listen, Coach, you make enough money. If you get in a fender bender, you can pay for it. But we don't. And he got so pissed at us that we didn't show up. But that's I think we almost missed 2 days because of it. But Coach Tanner was hot because we didn't drive in with Adam's mud tires on his truck.
That's awesome. I'm not sure if you drink, but if you do, favorite beer.
Favorite beer. I'm a big Belgian style beer guy. So not like Stella, but more like the Tripels and the stuff like the Trappist kind. So I would say like Chimay is probably some of my favorite. Birds Fly South in Greenville has a really good beer that's like a Belgian style beer that I like called Year End. But I like the Belgians. Those are kind of my favorite style beers.
Awesome.
I am not an IPA guy.
Not an IPA. See, that's
me
I'm the
headaches.
IPA. I like the IPAs actually. I'll be honest with you. I'm more of a liquor guy, whiskey. My preference. So I don't know.
Gotcha.
I don't know too much on the craft beer scene, but I'll take your word for it.
I stick with I stay away from liquor for the most part, and I stick with beer and wine.
There you go.
So,
That's the smart thing to do for sure. Your opinion, best pitch in baseball?
Strike.
A strike. That's probably the best answer you could give. Rosenblatt or TD Ameritrade?
TD Ameritrade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite superstition if you've got one?
Just make sure you should put some baby powder on before you go play. That's probably my favorite one.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, pants up or pants down?
Pants down.
Pants down. All right, last question.
I don't have the calves for pants up.
Okay.
You gotta have a good calf. For
Wingo was a big pants up guy.
Yeah.
But he had little chicken legs too, I think.
Exactly, he did, but he was small enough all around to do that. If I go pants up, I'll look like a bowling ball on some sticks, and that just isn't a good look.
All right, last question because I'm curious to get your opinion. Favorite Carolina uniform: the Friday night garnet pinstripes or the Yankee grays?
Yankee grays for sure.
Yeah,
and I hated. I mean, I didn't dislike the pinstripes, but I would have rather have worn something else on Friday night, but that's just what we wore. But I love the Yankee grays; those are my favorite.
Absolutely, yeah, I love those too. Those are such a clean look. So, with that being said, I know I've kept you a while, Michael, but I appreciate your time. Let the people know just kind of where they can find you on social media if they want to follow you or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm on MT Roth 29 on Twitter and Instagram, and that's about it. I'm not super active on it anymore. I've gotten away from it, but I still read some stuff and I check in every now and then. So send me a message and I'll connect with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we appreciate your time. Again, I'm Chris Phillips. I'm at CPhilly19 on Twitter if you want to follow me. Again, Armchair South Carolina, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You guys know where to find us. Make sure you check out the Spurs Up Show on iTunes, the Stitcher app, and, of course, ArmchairAmericans.com. So, again, Michael Roth, we appreciate your time. It's an absolute pleasure, and, hope to have you on the show again in the future.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Go Gamecocks.
Absolutely. Go Cox. So, again, he's Michael Roth for Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll catch you next time.